In this comparison video, I'm going to help you decide whether you should get the DJI Avata 2 or the DJI Neo. So the DJI Neo kind of looks like an Avata Mini. You can fly full manual FPV with this drone. It does have propeller guards on it that protect it from any sorts of crashes. Even the way that the body comes out to protect the camera, very similar with these two drones here. Now there are some huge differences here, and they are both quite different in a lot of factors, including the price and the specs and what you can use these drones for. But I wanted this video to really dive into the details to help you decide which drone is right for you. When we look at the cameras of these two drones here, the Avata 2 has a camera system which is a 1/1.3 inch sensor, and the Neo has a 1/2 inch sensor. So the Avata 2 has the better camera system here, and it allows more light into the camera system. It also has a better video quality to it. So the Neo can capture 4K 30 frames per second, but the video quality, you can just tell that it's a little bit more grainy, and it definitely isn't as high quality as something like the Avata 2. Now the Avata 2 can capture 4K up to 60 frames per second, and it does have HDR video options. Now when we compare the two videos, you can tell that the Avata 2 clearly wins this competition right now when it comes to video quality. It just looks so much smoother, so much crisper, better dynamic range, the colors pop more, and the clarity of the image is significantly better. Now the Neo is fine, it's 4K 30 frames per second, but I think it really is for people out there that maybe don't care so much about video quality. If you're getting the Neo for video quality specifically over another drone, then you might want to reconsider. Now, when we're looking into battery life here, this is another huge factor that a lot of people consider when they're looking to get a new drone. So the Avata 2 does have a battery life of 23 minutes. Now that's the quoted battery life. I did get the Fly More combo, so you get the extra batteries here, and it's a great little charging hub, great little system, but 23 minutes, you're probably getting maybe 16 minutes of flight time with the Avata 2. Now looking at the battery life of the DJI Neo, it does have worse battery life than the Avata 2, which is expected considering the batteries are so small and they really do weigh nothing at all. But the thing that's interesting here, right, is if you get yourself the Fly More combo and you get the 3 batteries, you can charge all 3 batteries at the same time. So that means that you're going to be able to get out a lot faster and be able to fly your drone when we compare it to the Avata 2. With the Avata 2 setup, it's going to charge the batteries individually. So that can really slow down the process of getting you back out on the field flying again. Now they're saying that you get 18 minutes of flight time with these little batteries here. Realistically, in the test that I did, you're getting about 13 to 14 minutes of flight time. So they quote it at 18 minutes. Realistically, you're getting about 14 minutes. And in the test that I did, that was from the point of 100% battery to the point that the drone forced itself to land. So you probably want to even take a couple more minutes off that because you want to bring the drone in and have it safely land. But we're talking to full depletion, you're getting about 14 minutes with these little batteries here. The other interesting thing to be aware of is that the Neo does weigh under 250 grams. It only weighs 135 grams, so it weighs literally nothing. It's such a lightweight drone. So that means that for lots of different countries out there, you don't have to worry about registration, you don't have to worry as much about the rules and regulations, but the Avata 2 weighs well over 250 grams, so you do need to be really careful where you fly it, make sure that you're registered, make sure that you've got your license, and you've done all of those processes to make sure that you can fly legally and safely. And so that's where there are some huge hurdles with the Avata 2. If you are interested in the DJI Avata 2 or the DJI Neo, I will have some links down below, so make sure to check them out. If you're based in Australia, you can use the code DANSTube over on the D1 Store's website, which is DJI Australia. It's just d1store.com.au. Make sure to check that out and use the code DANSTube. I'll also have some other links down below, so make sure to check them out if you're an international viewer or if you're looking for some specific bundles for one of these drones. When it comes to the different controller compatibility and how you're actually going to use these drones, the Avata 2 is clearly designed for the FPV experience. Now you have a few different controller options. You can't use really any of the other DJI controllers that you might use with another drone. So the N1, N2, N3, even like the RC, RC2, all of those don't work. You have to use something like this. So the Motion 2 and the Motion 3, it's a really fun experience. It's completely different to anything you've ever tried. So you use the accelerator and then you move in the real world to actually direct the drone. It's a lot of fun, really intuitive, and there's a few different button options on here. So you can record, you can do the emergency brake, you can do all sorts of things with this controller. So that's one of the options. And then you can also use the FPV remote controller 2 and 3. So this is the 3 here. This is the brand new one that comes with the Avata 2 compatible list. So you have to buy this separately. The thing that's interesting is this is then a true controller experience. This controller is what unlocks the full manual mode. So this is how you can do all of those crazy flips and all sorts of fun things with something like this. Now keep in mind there is the easy acro mode. So that's something you can use this controller for, the motion controller. And it gives you some control to do flips and rolls, and you can do like drift effects and all sorts of fun things. But if you really want to get more out of the Avata 2, you need to get yourself this controller. The other thing to be aware of here with the Avata 2 is that you can use either the Goggles 2 or the Goggles 3. Now, from my understanding, if you use the Goggles 3, they are only compatible with the FPV remote controller 3 and the Motion 3. Now, if you're using the Goggles 2, they will work with the Motion 2 as well as the FPV remote controller 2. So just keep that in mind. You can't kind of have the older version and then use it with the newer version. You have to pretty much lock into the newer version or the previous version. Now with the Goggles 3, this was a really nice upgrade for me. I had not used the previous models. I'd used the original one and then I'd jump straight to the Goggles 3. Now this was a world of difference for me in terms of the design. I love that the battery is on the back here and you have just the little like toggle option to tighten or loosen it. Very intuitive. The balance of weight feels great on your head. Great balance with everything. You've got the few different options, right? So you've got kind of the motion options or the touch interface on the side of the unit itself. Then you've got some few physical buttons as well. So you get 2 antennas flip up. You also have 2 cameras on the front here. So that means that you can have that picture in picture. So it's very handy when you're landing. And the Goggles 3 were a nice upgrade. Really happy with them. They worked flawlessly and I had no issues with them. Now, when we talk about the DJI Neo, this is where things get kind of interesting. So the Neo can work with so many different controllers. Now we'll have a list of all of the actual compatible controllers here. They might add more in the future, but what I just showed you with the Avata 2, all of that works with the Neo. You can also use voice controls. You can use the app on its own, or you can just use the buttons on the drone. So you don't even need to worry about having a controller at all. You can just power on the drone, select your mode, and then just hand launch it. So that's where the Neo really does stand out. It's something completely different to anything that we have seen, and it's extremely exciting. But do keep in mind, it's only got a level 4 wind rating, so it's about 28 kilometers that it can handle in the wind. You do need to keep that in mind because I do not feel as confident flying this. You will notice the footage can get knocked around a little bit if it is too windy. I also do find if I angle the camera down, that's where you get a little bit more movement as well. So you do need to be prepared for the wind conditions. Make sure you've got a wind app on your phone, something like Wind Compass or Drone Buddy, but that's something to be aware of with the Neo. The Avata 2 can handle level 5 winds, so you're getting a significantly more reliable experience with the Avata 2. I'm way more confident flying this over the water. I'm way more confident flying this in higher wind speeds. You're getting better battery life, you're getting a better wind resistance, and you're also getting a drone that can fly significantly faster. So I did find with the Neo, when I was using some of the control inputs, I found that it would fly just a little bit slower than what I'm used to. Now, when you do go into full manual mode with the Neo and you've got the FPV controller, it can pick up some speed, but still it's got nothing on the Avata 2, especially when you've got the Avata 2 in the manual mode. This thing is insanely fast. It's a true FPV experience and you can get some of the craziest shots you can imagine with the Avata 2. In terms of range from both of these drones, amazingly enough, they can both fly for kilometers, which is amazing, especially for something that small in the Neo. Keep in mind with the Neo though, the wind rating is only level 4 and its battery life isn't as good as the Avata 2, so I would suggest keeping this guy pretty close to you. In terms of internal storage, we've got 46 gigabytes of internal storage with the Avata 2, and we've got 22 gigabytes with the DJI Neo. So keep in mind the 22 gigabytes, it may sound small, but I find that I can fly many different flights and fill the internal storage up, and it's really not an issue. I find that 22 gigabytes on the Neo is actually well and truly enough. 46 gigabytes on this guy is perfectly fine, but it depends on how much you're pushing it. If you go into more of those raw video options, then the 46 gig will fill up. But you do have the option to add in an additional micro SD card, where on the Neo, you have to deal with the internal 22 gigabytes. You can't add any other micro SD card. Another huge calling card of the Avata 2, its footage is way more stable than the Neo. Considering the Avata 2 can fly really fast and you can do all sorts of movements, the footage is way more stable than what I can get on the Neo. The other thing to keep in mind is the Avata 2 can capture 10-bit D-Log-M. So it's got more of a flatter profile, better for post-production, where the Neo, you just have to deal with the normal color profile and you have to deal with the 4K 30. And again, the video quality is not as good. You can't even pull out too much out of it because it is a little bit more grainy than the Avata 2 video quality. When it comes down to the line, the Neo is a great beginner drone. It gives you so many different ways to interact with the drone. And then the Avata 2 is a true FPV drone, and that's what you're getting with the Avata 2. So the Neo is great for travel. It's great to not have to worry about the registration and a lot of the rules and regulations, where the Avata 2 is a little bit trickier. It weighs more. It's going to be a little bit trickier to fly in certain locations. It's going to be trickier to travel with, and there's just some limitations of it, but it is the true FPV experience from DJI. It's amazing and it does a phenomenal job. In full manual mode, it's a lot of fun, and using the motion controller, if you've never used this before, this is probably the most novel, unique way of flying a drone that I've ever experienced. I even had my friend test it out, and he had never flown anything like this before, and he picked it up within a few minutes. It's just that intuitive. It makes sense. If you've played a video game before, you will pick something like this up very quickly, and it is a lot of fun. Just using the motion controller is definitely a viable option to get some cool shots out of the Avata 2. If you are a beginner drone pilot, or you've got a friend, family member, loved one, someone who wants to start flying a drone but they're a little bit scared, make sure to check out the drone course, fearlessdrone.academy. Use the code DansTube over there to save on the drone course, and you can become a fearless drone pilot as well. So when it comes down to it, the Avata 2 is clearly for people that want the true FPV experience. Maybe you've got another drone, you've been practicing maybe in a simulator, like the Uncrash simulator, for example, and then you've gone, I think I'm ready to progress. And there are other drones that have compatibility with the goggles, for example. So maybe you've been flying with a previous drone like the Mini 4 Pro, you've been using the goggles and you're going, I really do want a true FPV experience. The Avata 2 is the one to get. It's a very durable drone. It's got a bunch of accessories on the market to protect it. You can see I've got some bumper guards on it right now for additional protection, and it's the best FPV experience from DJI right now. But it also is that. It is a true FPV experience, so you might have some issues with rules and regulations. You always have to wear the goggles, for example. You can't just have a casual flight with just a normal controller. You have to fully embrace the FPV world with the Avata 2. Now the Neo, for example, this gives you that, so you can have that full FPV experience. You can have the goggles, you can have the motion controller, but you can also just use the drone as a drone, or you can use it without any controller at all. So you can launch it off your palm and capture those fun moments. And even when it comes to the features, the Neo has all of those cool features that you can't even get on the Avata. So the Avata 2, you have some easy acro modes, but then outside of that, you pretty much just have to deal with flying it manually and figuring out what kind of shots you want. Where the Neo, you do have a bunch of options. You've got active track, you've got follow mode, you've got circle, rocket, helix, and then you can also control it with your voice, which is another layer on top of that. And then you can also use your phone as a microphone. So you could have this following you, hold your phone, and then narrate whatever it is that you're doing. So the Neo is definitely more versatile. That's clearly what I'm noticing here. Definitely not as powerful. The video quality is worse. The battery life's worse. You know, on paper, it doesn't have as much going for it as the Avata 2 when we look at those features, but everything else, all the modes and all the different functionalities that you have with the Neo, it actually outshines the Avata 2. So I think that's where this would come in really handy. If you've got another drone, something like this is a great introduction to FPV, right? Because you can fly full FPV with this drone, you can experience that, but then you can just give this to your friend, your partner, and they'll be able to launch it off that palm and just capture some cool shots without even knowing anything about drones. So the Neo is a very unique offering. It's probably the most exciting offering that I've seen from DJI in a very long time. Definitely looks like it was almost trying to be a Avata Mini. So I think the Neo is the strong pick for people that are beginners, that want to get into FPV, but for people who have other drones and you want to get into FPV a bit more seriously, the Avata 2 is definitely the one to get. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and I'll chat to you in the next one. Peace.